2, 3, hit back.
Welcome back to the Be Different podcast. Conference championship season is upon us, and we have Andy Mack. Unfortunately, Andy Mack is not here with us in studio. He is traveling to New York, and he's dealing with the weather right now, having a little bit of a tough time actually getting out of Cincinnati. But Andy, thanks for joining us via phone prior to your departure to New York.
Brad, it's my pleasure. I'm just hanging around CVG. Hopefully my flight to Newark will actually depart. I got canceled out of 2 flights last night, and Winter Storm Quinn. They're now naming the winter storms because I guess it's sexier for TV, just like hurricanes. But I think we're going to get into Newark, and then take the train into Penn Station, and we'll be good to go to watch the 2 first round play-in games this evening at Madison Square Garden.
And those first-round games, Georgetown versus St. John's, the 8-9 game, that will be at 7 o'clock. Winner of that game plays the Xavier Musketeers. And the game after, the 7-10 game, that's Marquette versus DePaul at 9:30. But, Andy, I'm concerned about you. I'm concerned that you're going to be able to get there in one piece. We need to make sure Andy Mack can call in from the Big East tournament to the Be Different podcast.
Well, I'm a high-priority passenger. Delta's treating me with kid gloves, and I'm getting the VIP treatment, and I think we'll be all right.
All right. Well,
the planes I fly on have no first class. It's all like steerage, everybody in the back of the bus.
I don't know. I feel like everything that you do, Andy Mack, is first class. Everything you do is first class. All
right, Brad. Enough of this. Whatever political.
Nothing. I'm not a political guy. I do nothing political. You know me well enough to know that. Now we'll talk about some political stuff here. Postseason awards in the Big East. The first team, second team, all freshman team came out last week. Trayvon Blewett, unanimous selection on the first team. Najee Marshall, unanimous selection on the freshman team. Jp Macura snubbed. Andy, what are your thoughts so far on what has come out on those postseason awards?
I really could care less about those postseason awards. They're all political. They're sort of interesting but non-consequential. But the good part is that JP did get snubbed, and I'm sure that Chris Mack has already used that as a motivational tool. Not that JP needs to be any more hyped up for the Big East tournament. He always plays well at Madison Square Garden. He likes the bright lights, and I expect JP to drop some big numbers on those unsuspecting Big East opponents at the MSG over the next few days, because he definitely deserved. They didn't even give him honorable mention. I can't believe it. Here's a 4-year guy who scored upwards of 1,500 points, and Xavier doesn't win at Seton Hall without him this year. They don't come back in a couple of other games and win without JP's productivity. And Xavier is the regular season Big East champion, 27-4, 15-3 in the league, and your second best player can't even make one of the all-league teams. Politics be damned. JP, in my book, is at least a second teamer and probably a first teamer, but it's all irrelevant. It's up to the performance on the floor, and the idea is to win a Big East tournament championship to go lockstep with a regular season title. And the big plum here is the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. I think Xavier will get one if they win 2 games in New York, and if they get to the championship game against Villanova or whomever, it's sort of irrelevant. I think the committee is going to be forced to vote the Xavier into a number 1 seed.
Do you think they need to win 2 games, as you said, or do you think 1 game will likely be sufficient?
I think 1 might work if Duke goes down early in the ACC tournament over across Manhattan in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center, and if Kansas goes out early in the Big 12 championship in Kansas City. Those 2 are lurking in the weeds. They're the blue bloods. The committee is going to look at Duke, Kansas, and Xavier if the team sheets are anywhere near equal, and Xavier's going to get screwed. That's just the way it works. I don't care how much they talk about metrics and and power ratings, et cetera, et cetera. And Xavier's doing really well in that bracket matrix deal. They have an average seed of 1.06, whatever that means. But when it comes to nut cutting time here, and say Xavier would lose in the quarters, which I doubt very much, but if they would lose in the semis, say to the winner of that Providence Creighton game, I think they got trouble unless Duke and Kansas get dinged in their respective tournaments. So to be on the safe side, win 2 in New York, get to the championship game, and I think Xavier might be able to skate to a number 1 seed in the Midwest region. That means 2 wins in Nashville. And Xavier, if they get out number 1, will definitely go to Nashville for the first weekend. 2 wins down there, and they get to go to Omaha with a pseudo home crowd at CenturyLink. All those Creighton fans will get behind X, and there'll be 3,000 or 4,000 Muskie fans out there. Home court advantage would be huge. I mean, I think that's their best shot to get to a Final Four.
Yeah, and you look at the teams, outside of the Big East that have a chance of that 1 seed, and you mentioned it, Kansas, Duke, Virginia already locked at that 1 seed. The worst case scenario for Xavier right now is probably the top 2 seed. The only way I don't see them getting that 1 is if they get bounced early, as you talked about in the Big East tournament. Villanova advances to win the Big East tournament. Kansas advances to win the Big 12. Duke advances to win the ACC. And with Virginia being a lock, that's where you could possibly see Xavier as that top 2 seed. But I like the Muskies as the 1 seed. Andy, I want to ask you about some of these CBS experts. There were 6 of them out there. Greg Wichard was mentioning what these guys said about the Big East tournament today. Out of 6 experts, how many of them do you think picked the Xavier Musketeers to win the Big East tournament?
I would say a big old 0.
And you would be correct. 5 of the experts picked Villanova. 1 of the experts picked Creighton to win the Big East tournament. I know that's not what you think. What are Xavier's chances in the Big East tournament coming in as the outright Big East champions and the number 1 overall seed?
I think the way the bracket sets up, that Xavier should be able to get by the quarter against either the St. John's Georgetown winner. Although, St. John's on their pseudo home floor at MSG could be a problem, but they're down to 6 scholarship guys. That is, if Shimori Pons does not play. I would expect that, although he's missed 2 games in a row, I think Pons will be out there. And that could be a little sticky, but St. John's coming back on short rest with a short bench, and Xavier, totally healthy, being motivated with a lot to play for. I think Xavier wins the quarter, either against G-Town or St. John's. Then in the semi, they'd get the winner of Providence and Creighton, and I sort of like Xavier in that game. If they get to the championship game, I don't care if it's Villanova or Oshkosh University in the Big East championship game. If it's Villanova and Xavier, they're both, in my opinion, going to be number 1 seeds. Although, that 10-man committee, they're the only people that count out there in Indianapolis, and they're all influenced by blue blood history, Duke, Kansas, whatever. Luckily, the 2 Big Ten teams with that premature Big Ten tournament at MSG that nobody attended except for the championship game. Michigan helped by beating Purdue and Michigan State. So those guys, Purdue and Michigan State, there's no way they're going to get 1 seed. If they do, well, we need an investigation, and we need all those 10 people to be arrested in Indianapolis. So it's down to 5 teams for 4 number 1s. And I'm just wondering if Xavier and Villanova don't both make it to the championship game in New York on Saturday, will the committee take a deep breath, a big gulp, and not put 2 Big East teams on the 1 line? If they both get to the championship game, I think they got to put Villanova and Xavier at the number 1. And X might have to win to get that number 1 in the Midwest. Well, I mean, if I had my druthers, I don't want to go to Los Angeles. I'd rather go to Omaha in the second weekend. Xavier could always lose the 8-9 game on Sunday down in Nashville. I mean, who knows who's going to be in that 8-9 bracket? Could be Kentucky, could be Florida State, could be Florida, could be Oklahoma. Who knows? It's going to be a difficult game. But Chris Mack is going to have that zone defense in his back pocket if things get sticky here comes the 2-3, here comes the 1-3-1, and those big power conference guys will not have prepared properly for that. I mean, just like Florida State and Arizona last year, they sort of poo-pooed it. It bit them right in the ass. So, I think ideally the ideal path for Xavier is a number 1 seed, Midwest, 2 wins in Nashville, and then a trip to Omaha. And I'll take my chances getting to San Antonio.
I'm with you there. This week it will be interesting, that St. John's game, if they're able to get that matchup on Thursday. That would be a noon game. That's the one that would possibly bother me a little bit if Shamari Pons is at full health. But moving forward, I like that they get the winner of Creighton versus Providence. They've matched up well for the most part with both these teams this year. And as a Xavier guy, I would love to see the Musketeers in this group, this roster, especially with the seniors that we have that lead this team, to get one more chance at Villanova, as challenging as they have been. Andy, would you say most Xavier fans would love to see one more matchup to take on the Wildcats?
Yeah, I mean, the old axiom is the bromide. It's very tough to beat a good team 3 times in a year. Well, Xavier's a good team. Villanova's a good team. I'd like to see that Saturday matchup at MSG. It would be sold out and raucous, and it would be super. But more important to me is a number 1 NCAA seed, if they get that far, and get everybody healthy out of that game. We don't, 2 years ago, Xavier had a 2 seed, and, James Farr got injured. Miles Davis was starting his social problems, and Trayvon Blewett actually sprained an ankle in the Marquette game at MSG, and he was not right either. So Xavier went in with one hand tied behind their back, and then they ran into a really good 7 seed in Wisconsin with all those veteran players. And, it took 2 miracle shots by Bronson Koenig to tie him and then beat him. So I just want health for the Muskies, the number 1 seed in the Midwest, and I think this could be a really good result, at least an Elite 8, and maybe the Holy Grail in that first Final Four.
Well, Xavier's checked the box so far in just about every category so far this year, winning the Big East outright, the first time by a team other than Villanova since the new realignment. And now it's time to look at the Big East tournament, which we talked about, and the NCAA tournament. This team has a lot more to accomplish, and they've been up for the occasion. They've been up to compete no matter who has come against them so far, and I expect the same thing. Andy, for all of us who will not be able to go to the Garden during this week, can you talk about the atmosphere that will be there? I know that you've been there before. You hear Coach Mack and the players talk about it, but from a fan's perspective, what is it like at the Garden?
It's amazing what $1 billion can do. They hollowed out the old MSG, which was they called the world's greatest arena, but it was a pit, the one that they built back in like '68. I mean, they never did anything to it. It was terrible. But they spent $1 billion. They hollowed it out, and it's a great building now. I mean, everything is well appointed, well organized. The sight lines are great, and I think the quarters, semis, and the championship game are all going to be sold out this year. There may be some available seats for the play-in games on Wednesday, but the Big East is. Maybe it's not Connecticut, Syracuse, whatever, the old Big East, but ESPN keeps replaying that requiem for the Big East, and that thing needs to be updated. The Big East is alive and well, and the crowds will be great. I think Xavier has sold like 1,200 all-session packages, and I imagine there'll be another 1,800, 2,000 Xavier people there, so it should be terrific atmosphere, and the Big Ten was a nice little hors d'oeuvre. Nobody showed up until the championship game last weekend at MSG. They should slink back to Indianapolis and Chicago and play that tournament where it belongs. Really, I mean,
no, it doesn't make any sense to have the Big Ten played in New York. You played in Chicago, you played in Indianapolis, where it has been in years past. It makes no sense to have the Big Ten play their tournament a week earlier than every other major conference team, and have them play in New York further on that east side doesn't make any sense.
It only makes sense to the TV people, and they got Rutgers into the league, so they had to appease them. And Rutgers isn't even a hiccup in the New York media market. Nobody cares about Rutgers. But they can lump all those New York Metro TV numbers into their advertising packages. That's why they do it. It's strictly a money deal. And we got the ACCs at the Barclays Center over in Brooklyn. That makes no sense. That's a Tobacco Road event. Greensboro, Charlotte, Roanoke, whatever. The whole college basketball world can be a little crazy like everything else in life. But hey, all I can say is the Big East, by contract, has MSG locked up through 2026. And Bafangula to the other leagues who try to horn their way in. The Big Ten coaches are really upset about playing that tournament a week early. I tell you, they are really frosted.
Well, yeah, and they have to wait now almost 10 days just to get the selection show, and then they're almost 2 weeks before they play another competitive game. And for a team like Michigan that won the Big Ten tournament now to have to wait to play, I mean, that's going to kill some of their momentum. It'll take them a second to get back into that first game that they play. If I'm in a Big Ten, I'm a coach, I'm a player, I'm disappointed that that tournament was so early. Now you got to sit back, you have to wait, and you have to watch everybody else at this time.
So maybe Xavier would be well served by playing a Big Ten team like in the second round, and play an 8-9 winner from the Big Ten. Maybe Ohio State, or I don't even know who else is in there. They got Purdue. Maybe I don't think I'd want to play Michigan the way they're playing.
Michigan would be the only team I wouldn't want to see, just from an offensive perspective. The way that they can spread you out 1 through 5, and Mo Wagner is a star. But outside of Michigan, I think Xavier matches up really well with just about every other team in the Big Ten. I'd be fine with playing just about anybody else.
Michigan would be the perfect team if you still had eligibility and you could play for John Beilein. I mean, your game would fit perfectly along with Duncan Robinson, the Williams College Division III product, et cetera, Mo Wagner and company, Brad Redford out on the wing on the secondary break, pumping up about 6 or 7 wide open threes per game, and Michigan would be off to a national championship. But I guess you don't have any eligibility.
No, I'm done. I just like doing the podcast. I'm done. My playing days are over. But back in my day, if I could go back to that John Beilein offense, that might not be too bad. I love the way he spreads them out. That motion is fun. Not a group that runs a whole lot of set plays. They play off of feel, and they play off of space and driving and angles. So they've been fun to watch. I'm definitely a John Beilein fan. But Andy, I want you to be safe. When is your flight supposed to take off?
I don't know, what time is it now. I think it's 7:25 or something.
Well, you're about 30 minutes away from that 7:25 hopeful departure. But Andy, we will be thinking about you and the Musketeers here in Cincinnati. We appreciate you coming on, calling in, doing what you need to do to make sure that you get all of this information out to the people, and that's what we're here for.
Hey, one more thing, Brad. I hope that Coach Mack gets Coach of the Year in the Big East. I mean, was it 2 years ago he won the National Coach of the Year, and he couldn't even get Coach of the Year in his own conference. So, I'm sure that JQJ will win it again in the Big East because he dresses better than anybody. But Chris Mack richly deserves Coach of the Year, and he gets a huge $80 bonus if he wins it.
Well, and Xavier was picked preseason to finish third in the Big East. They finished first, outright title, ranked number 2 in the country. You would think that Coach Chris Mack would be a lock to be Big East Coach of the Year, but crazier things have happened. As you mentioned just a couple of years ago, Coach Mack, National Coach of the Year, but did not win it in his own conference. But I think they'll repay him today. I think he will get that award. Hopefully he should. It's well-deserved for what the Musketeers have done this year.
Hey, 27-4, 15-3 in the league, number 2 in the USA Today Coaches Poll, highest rating in Xavier history, number 3 in the Adult Media AP poll, number 3 in the RP High, on and on. Tick off the accomplishments. 7 Big East road wins. That's the only real blemishes on the schedule are those 2 tainted suspects. Double-digit losses to Villanova. So maybe that can be avenged on Saturday night. Who knows?
I'm sure Coach Mack and the group would like that as well as yourself. And Andy Mack, have a great flight. Enjoy your time in New York. We're going to get back with you on Monday, and that will be after the Big East tournament has happened. That will be after the selection show has been shown to everybody, and we're going to break down, we're going to analyze all 4 regions, and we'll be able to take a look at Xavier's chances moving forward in the NCAA tournament next week. So, Andy, enjoy your trip, and we will talk here shortly.
All right, Brad.
All right, Andy, take care.